My husband and mother-in-law treated me like a servant, mocking my efforts, demanding obedience, and making me feel invisible. Alex's words cut through the clatter of dishes like a keen scalpel. "Alara, bring me some tea now." I halted, my hands dipped in soapy water. "Hold on, I'm doing the dishes." "What?" His tone was incredulous and impatient. "Stop that, and then bring me the tea right away. Can't you obey simple commands?" But I began, only to be interrupted. "What a useless wife you are." "Make me some sweet coffee," said another voice. Mrs. Whitmore, my mother-in-law, spoke from the living room. She sat there munching a slice of cake she had grabbed from the fridge, her eyes gleaming with malice. I sighed and looked at the stack of dishes. "There are so many. Leave them for later. Just do what we say, useless wife." Alex's voice hissed, each syllable hurting. I was Alara, a 28-year-old working mother whose life felt more like a jail than a home. Married at 23, I had hoped for love and friendship, but instead found myself in the hands of Alex and his domineering mother. Our 4-year-old son was the only bright spot in an otherwise dark existence. We lived in Alex's parents' house, a decision foisted on me under the premise of caring for Mrs. Whitmore after my father-in-law died. Initially, I sympathized with her alleged anguish, but it quickly became evident that I was nothing more than a part in her cruel game of home oppression. Cooking, cleaning, and working just weren't enough. My attempts were treated with derision, and my meals were either left untouched or sharply ridiculed. "The stir-fry is so half-hearted," Mrs. Whitmore would remark. "Cook it properly from scratch." "I'm busy and can only do simple things," I'd say, trying to maintain a calm voice. "That's why I hate backtalk from my daughter-in-law," she quipped. "Cook from scratch? Why don't you cook? You are a good cook, correct?" I risked reacting once and soon regretted it. "Why would I do housekeeping with you here?" She responded coldly and dismissively. "Are you out of your mind?" Their brutality grew with time, progressing from harsh words to a chilling quiet. They began to entirely disregard me, as if I were a ghost in my own home. My presence, which was previously underestimated, now appeared completely invisible. 5 years passed in this suffocating environment. Alex and I turned 35 and 33 respectively. Our son developed, but the unpleasant atmosphere in the house remained constant. My mother-in-law, now 63, appeared to thrive on my suffering. One evening, as I trudged home from work, a heavy revelation hit me. They saw my existence as meaningless. I was a shadow, unnoticed and unheard. The only voice that acknowledged me was my son's. The idea of losing even that minor recognition was agonizing. When I returned home, I started cooking right away, hoping to lift my spirits. I made mapo tofu, fried chicken, and a stir-fry with bell peppers and pork, attempting to bring some regularity to our dinner. "Bring me the mayo," Alex said unexpectedly, breaking his long silence. "Sure, here you are," I said, handing him the mayonnaise. His first words to me in ages were not thanks or discussion, but rather a command. It was the last straw, the limit of my patience and tolerance. Mrs. Whitmore demanded, "Clean the toilet." "What? Now?" I was shocked. "Yes, now," she demanded, her voice full of hate. I snapped back, unable to suppress my annoyance. "Don't say such a thing while we're eating. It's nasty, just like your heart," she said. Our dispute immediately escalated, with Alex interjecting and demanding that I apologize to his mother. But I refused, standing firm for the first time in years. The conflict reached its climax, and a conclusion formed within me. I needed to get out of this toxic environment, not just for myself, but also for my baby. I returned to my room, my determination stiffening. I downloaded divorce papers, completed them, and slapped them in front of Alex. His amazement was evident, but I felt just icy determination. "I'm filing these," I announced, my voice firm. As I stood there looking at my husband's puzzled expression, I realized I had finally stepped out of the shadows. It was time to regain my life. The days after I declared my divorce were a blur of frigid stares and stinging remarks. But in the midst of the chaos, I discovered an unexpected sense of freedom. Mrs. Whitmore looked at the food I was serving one evening with distaste. "You call this food? Even a child cooks better." I bit my tongue, concentrating on my son's happy expression. "Eat up, sweetheart. I made your favorite tonight," Alex added, his voice full of sarcasm. "Oh, playing the perfect mother now, are we? What a joke." I could feel my rage rising, but I held my cool. "I'm just trying to make a nice dinner for our son." Mrs. Whitmore snorted. "Don't act high and mighty. You're just a burden in this house. The tension around the table was apparent. Alex's attempts to insult me grew more intense. So, Alara, have you thought about how you'll survive after the divorce? You can barely keep a house, let alone your own life. I stared him directly in the eyes. I have been supporting this family for years. I'm not worried about taking care of myself and our son. His smirk faded somewhat, and a spark of concern appeared on his face. Mrs. Whitmore was quick to intercede. Don't be absurd. You need us more than we need you. The talk drifted to finances, which they typically avoided. You do realize that without my salary, this household would crumble, I said, more to myself rather than to them. Mrs. Whitmore sneered. We'd manage. We don't need your pity money. But Alex's silence spoke volumes. He understood the truth. They would be in serious financial trouble if I did not provide a living. Their behavior deteriorated during the next few days. Mrs. Whitmore alternated between trying to sweet-talk me into staying and shouting insults when I refused. Alex, on the other hand, appeared confused, his arrogance eroding as the reality of his financial dependency became clear. One afternoon, I overheard a talk between them that chilled me to the core. She can't just leave us like this, Alex growled. We need her money. Mrs. Whitmore's response was chilly and calculating. Do not worry. I have a plan. We'll make her life so unpleasant that she won't want to leave. Hearing their genuine objectives exposed was a revelation. They did not care about me or our son. It was all about power and wealth. That night, as I lay in bed, an idea began to emerge in my head. If they wanted to fight, I'd give them one. But it would not be fought with words or trivial disputes. I'd strike them where it hurts the most, their pride and their pocketbook. The following morning, I began putting my plan into action. I contacted a lawyer, a bright, non-nonsense woman who was highly recommended. I want a divorce, and I want to make sure they don't get a penny more than they deserve, I informed the woman. She nodded, her eyes bright with determination. We'll make sure of it. You've been the only breadwinner, correct? We'll make use of that. My resolve got stronger with each passing day. I began documenting everything: insults, financial manipulation, and even little grievances. It was time to turn the tables. It was time for them to accept the repercussions of their deeds. As I prepared my case, I felt a sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I felt like I had power over my own fate. The shades of scorn were slowly lifting, revealing a new dawn. As the divorce proceedings began, the mood in the house became more caustic. Yet, with each passing day, my panic faded, replaced by a steely resolve. Mrs. Whitmore decided to try a new strategy one evening. Alara dear, why don't we forget all this nasty business? You know we're family. Her comments were insincere. I met her stare unwaveringly. Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me. Alex, who had been silently watching, scoffed. Oh, playing the victim now? You're not as innocent as you pretend to be. I felt a wave of rage, but kept my voice composed. I'm not playing anything, Alex. I'm just no longer willing to be your scapegoat. As is typically the case, the subject turned to finances. You think you can just take our son and leave? How will you support him? Alex was skeptical. I grinned with a tiny, confident curl of my lips. I've been supporting this family for years. I think I can manage. Mrs. Whitmore turned her gaze into a sneer. You're nothing without us. You'll come crawling back. But their remarks no longer had force over me. I recognized my worth and knew the truth. The following day, I met with my lawyer again. She outlined the strategy clearly. We'll expose their financial dependency on you. It will play a crucial role in the custody battle and the division of assets. I nodded, feeling vindicated. The law was on my side, and I was prepared to fight back. At home, the tension had reached a boiling point. Mrs. Whitmore's attempts to discredit me got increasingly desperate. You think you're so smart, she sneered one evening, but you're just a cold-hearted woman abandoning your family. I stared her directly in the eyes. No, I'm a woman who's finally standing up for herself. Alex leaped in, his voice full of fury. You'll regret this. You can't survive without me. However, his threats fell on deaf ears. I was done being intimidated. As the days passed, my preparations for the court battle became more intense. I obtained financial accounts, documented their harsh remarks, and gathered evidence of their negligence. One afternoon, as I was arranging my documents, my kid approached me. Mom, are we going to be okay? His voice was soft and hesitant. I drew him into an embrace, feeling a flash of protectiveness. Yes, sweetheart, we're going to be just fine. We're leaving this place, and we're going to start a new, happy life, just you and me. His arms tightened around me, and I knew I'd made the correct decision. I was fighting not just for myself, but also for my son's future. The court hearing date approached, bringing with it the prospect of impending freedom. I was prepared to confront Alex and Mrs. Whitmore and put an end to their tyranny and emotional abuse. I was ready to take back my life and give my son the peace and happiness he deserved. It was time for justice, and I was determined to see it delivered. The court hearing day arrived, and I was filled with both dread and determination. I felt a sense of surrealism when I sat across from Alex and Mrs. Whitmore in court. This was the moment when everything changed. The proceedings started with frigid formality. Alex's lawyer portrayed him as a dedicated spouse and parent battling under unjust accusations. Mrs. Whitmore played the sorrowful mother-in-law who had been wronged by her ungrateful daughter-in-law. However, their performance was apparent, and their lies were flimsy. When my turn came, I spoke clearly and steadily. I've been the only provider for this family for years. My husband's unemployment and his mother's manipulative behavior have been continual sources of stress. Alex intervened, his voice tinged with faint hurt. Alara, how can you say such things? I've always backed you. I turned to him, my stare steadfast. Alex, support is more than words. It's about deeds, and your actions have only demonstrated selfishness and harshness. The judge listened closely as I presented my evidence, which included financial accounts, audio recordings of their verbal abuse, and testimony from neighbors who witnessed their behavior. The fact was undeniable. As the evidence accumulated, Alex's facade began to collapse. Mrs. Whitmore's poise shattered, and her innocence slipped away. The courtroom was quiet, the air thick with anxiety. Then came the realization that sealed their doom. My lawyer submitted photos and documentation confirming Alex's adultery and Mrs. Whitmore's clandestine affair with Mr. Harwood, a wealthy neighbor. Murmurs broke out in the courtroom as the photographs of them in compromising postures were shown. Their lie was exposed for all to see. Alex's face became ashen, his eyes wide with surprise. Mrs. Whitmore's face twisted into rage, and her hands trembled. You compromised our privacy, she yelled, her voice shrill. I glanced at her, my voice steady yet forceful. I revealed the truth, which you both had been hiding for far too long. The court shouted for order, but the harm was already done. Their credibility was shattered, and their lies were revealed in the bright light of the courtroom. As the session concluded, the judge's conclusion was apparent. I was given full custody of our son, and a fair distribution of assets was ordered. Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were left with just their destroyed reputations. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders. The years of deception and emotional assault had finally ended. I had confronted my oppressors and emerged victorious. But the finest moment was when my son raced into my arms outside the courthouse, his face beaming with relief and joy. "We did it, Mom," he exclaimed, his voice full of delight. "Yes, we did," I said, holding him close. "We're free now. This is only the beginning for us." As we walked away hand in hand, I realized this was more than simply a personal win. It was a victory for everybody who has ever been made to feel little, helpless, or unworthy. It represented a victory for truth and justice. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one full of optimism and the promise of a better future. The court verdict had an immediate and chaotic impact. The story of Alex and Mrs. Whitmore's deception spread like wildfire, ruining their reputations in our little neighborhood. They could no longer hide behind their facade of respectability. In the days following the verdict, I concentrated on rebuilding my life with my kid, but I couldn't deny the gratification of knowing Alex and Mrs. Whitmore were facing the repercussions of their decisions. One evening, as I was making dinner, I had an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Harwood, Mr. Harwood's wife, appeared, her eyes crimson from unshed tears. "Alara, I've heard about everything. I can't believe what Sylvia, Mrs. Whitmore, did," she exclaimed, her voice breaking. I invited her in and offered a cup of tea. As we sat at the kitchen table, she expressed her sadness. I trusted her as a neighbor and friend, and to think she was having an affair with my husband. Her voice trembled, so I listened and offered words of comfort. Mrs. Whitmore's actions had clearly caused far more damage than she had planned. The next day, I saw Alex in town. He was a shell of his former self, his arrogance replaced with a defeated expression. "Alara, please, can we speak?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I paused, facing him. "What's there to talk about, Alex?" He fidgeted, unwilling to meet my gaze. I apologize for everything. I didn't understand how much I relied on you and your strength. His apologies, however late, reflected the shift in power. He had lost everything, his dignity, his home, and his family. And in that loss, he had finally admitted his own flaws. Mrs. Whitmore, however, received the greatest criticism. Her affair with Mr. Harwood had not only wrecked her reputation, but also resulted in legal problems. Mrs. Harwood sought a divorce and sued her for alienation of affection. I learned of Mrs. Whitmore's dilemma from neighbors. Whispers and tales depicted a lady undone by her own acts. She had become an outsider, rejected by individuals she had previously considered friends. I saw her at the grocery store one day, hurrying through the aisles with downcast eyes. Our paths touched, and for a brief moment, our eyes met. The sight of hatred and defeat in her eyes was undeniable. "You did this to me," she said under her breath as she walked by. I watched Sylvia leave, her figure slowly fading as she hurried away, her eyes filled with resentment. I felt a strange mix of pity for her and vindication for myself. "No, Sylvia," I whispered under my breath. "You did this to yourself." The tides of justice had finally shifted. Everything they had done to me, all the lies, the manipulation, the emotional torment, had come full circle. The consequences of their actions were now irreversible. I could see them struggling, living in the aftermath of the deceit they had carefully cultivated over the years. Their false facade had shattered, and now they were forced to face the reality of what they had become. As I watched them suffer through the consequences of their own making, I felt a sense of calm satisfaction. But it wasn't just about them getting what they deserved. The real reward was in the freedom I had gained. The best form of retribution, I realized, was not in revenge, but in living a life full of peace and strength, free from the toxicity and harmful influence they had cast upon me for so long. My focus shifted back to what truly mattered, the future I was building with my son. We were free now, free from the prison they had trapped me in for all those years. I had broken free, and now I was living the life I had always dreamed of. This wasn't just a story of revenge or victory. It was a story of liberation. It was a powerful testament to my strength and resilience. I had taken control of my destiny, broken the chains of abuse, and freed myself from the tyranny of their manipulation. As I looked ahead, I knew that the future was bright and the best was yet to come. I was no longer a prisoner to their cruelty. I was free, and the world was mine to conquer.